Hi, I'm Melinda Van Fleet, and welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. I'm an author, speaker, and success coach who helps women believe in themselves, build confidence, and take action. In 2009, my husband Ryan and I were laid off at the same time, and we moved to the Florida Keys without jobs, not knowing anyone, hardly any money, and we never even been here. But we made it. And now, not every day is sunshine and rainbows, but we're living our best lives. All along in our journey, I've always said that someday when we get our shit together, we will help others. So each week, my intent is to be relatable and bring you tactical tips, tools, share my learnings and stories that can help inspire or transform you wherever you are in your career or general life and make an impact. I strongly believe that if I can do it, you can do it too. So what's stopping you? Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Good Karma Success Coach podcast. Thank you for joining me. I thought I would share some tips and ideas today on rituals, practices, and habits. And I will try to be as concise as possible for this podcast because let me tell you, when I started to do a little research to get my terminology straight, it's quite a rabbit hole you could go down. There's lots of stuff on Google about the differences between these three words, rituals, habits, and practices. And it can get a little confusing. It can get a little muddy. So I was like, you know what? This actually could be a really good podcast, not only to share ideas, which is how this originated, was I thought, hey, I'm going to share some things that Ryan and I started to do, but then also share a little clarity on the differences between the terminology so you can start to think about what you do every day and how does it fall into one of these three words, and is there something that you want to fine-tune or change or tweak a little bit? Maybe there's something you want to start, maybe there's something you want to stop, and how is it serving you? So again, there's a lot to pack into this podcast, so we'll just get started. And I would love to hear anyone's, what their takeaways were from this. What are they going to maybe add into their day or week or month, and maybe something they're going to, shift or stop doing after they listen to this and give it some thought, because it is quite interesting. I think it's quite interesting, the whole concept of rituals, habits, and practices. So how this first started as a thought, because I've been noodling this for a long time, is my first podcast that I did with my niece, Sienna, which is episode 144. Is that right? Yes, episode 144. So in that podcast episode, if you go back and listen, Sienna shares that she does an altar with, and she changes it up with the moon. So she puts like crystals and feathers. Sometimes if she has a painting, she does all different things. She'll add oracle cards, and they're quite beautiful. Like, she sends me text messages when she makes a new one, and they're really, really, really pretty. And so it's not something I've ever done. So it just started to really make me ponder, why are some people called to do certain things and why some people aren't? And then that doesn't mean that might not change in your life, right? So something that Ryan and I have done a few times is have like a little full moon or new moon ritual where we go outside and I bring some sage and our crystals, and we write affirmations or different things we're releasing or that we desire, whatever stage the moon is in, it coordinates with that, and light it on fire and say a prayer. And so I'm like, okay, that kind of resonates with me to do that, but it doesn't resonate with me to do an altar, so why is that? Like, I really don't know. It's just something I think about and I contemplate. So then I started to think about, gosh, that's really a ritual. And what my niece does is really a ritual. And that's how I started down this rabbit hole. So a ritual is what I just described, when you have various steps in the process. So for example, again, with the new moon or the full moon, we bring the crystals outside, write. I make him write, like, whether it's gratitude or things he wants to release. I do the same, or we put our, desires on a piece of paper. I bring out the sage and I like create like a little bowl, and I light it on fire. Like, I literally light it on fire, and we say a prayer, and maybe our whole ritual takes, 10 minutes, and it's not very long. And that's it. So if it's the new moon, I believe, if I'm getting this right, just from my memory, you're releasing things. So we write like what you want to release. And that's our little ritual. So it's a practice in terms of the terminology because it has intention. And then again, it's a ritual because there's different little steps. So they kind of go hand in hand. A habit, on the other hand, is something that you do without really thinking about it. So an example for me is that I drink a ton of water. I drink water all day long. I do not think about it except that I have to go refill my water glass. I mean, really, that's it. It is truly a habit. I could make it more of a practice if I blessed my water, right? So there's a lot of like combinations in this, and there's a lot of overlap, which is why when you Google it, and you can go down a rabbit hole. So I'm trying to make this more clear with some good examples. So I could make drinking my water more of a practice or even an intense ritual by blessing my water, which I do believe in. I actually do believe in the energetic properties of water and that you can bless it and you can send blessings to everyone as you drink your water. But I just don't tend to do that. I have done it before. I've had people bless my water before. I did rainbow Reiki before with Christine. And that was part of I can't remember that instructor's name, but that was part of his practice and what he taught us to do. Dr. June does blessing of the water. Linda Lang does blessing of the water. So there's all these resources out there. And if you want more on that, please feel free to reach out. I can forward you their content. But it's just not something I tend to do. But you can make that a practice. You can make that a ritual where maybe you light some candles and you say a really big prayer, and then you bless the water, and then you drink the water, and you can make that even more of a ritual, right? So there's different things that you can do to have it maybe fit into the different categories if you want to elevate it. So again, like, you could take a habit that you have and you can make it more intentional as a practice or even a ritual. So I'll give you another example. Walking to me every morning is a habit. Like, if I don't have my morning walk, like, I kind of go nuts. You can ask my husband, Ryan. It's like, I have to have my morning walk. So to me, that's like a habit. Like, I don't have to think about it. However, I make it more of a practice where it's more intentional because I say my prayers. I ask for, thoughts to come to me for content to share with the world that day. So I have like intentional things that I say. I bless the earth. I say thank you to Mother Gaia for the trees and the stars in the sky, and anything else that comes across my path. If I smell a beautiful tree, because I can smell the flowers, I have really good scent. As a Claire, I can smell really well, and so that becomes more of a practice, and then it becomes even more of a ritual because I bring my umbrella, so it doesn't rain. Like, kind of like, I wear my earbuds but no sound, because that helps me be more clairsentient. So there's just different things that I do to elevate that habit and make it more of a practice and even a ritual, right? So it's really kind of fascinating when you think about the different things that you do during the day. Maybe you're someone that has teeth brushing as a habit. Obviously, we all do, but some people may not brush their teeth as much as others. Well, you can also elevate that, and you can stretch while you brush your teeth. My friend Paula, she is excellent at stretching while she dries her hair. I would love to pick that up as a practice. because drying your hair is kind of like a habit, like kind of something you have to do. You don't really think that much about it. But if you elevate that, you're making that more into a practice. So there's just different things, you can do within your day that are really, really amazing. So one of the things that Ryan and I just recently started doing, maybe like a month ago, is reading a verse, a chapter really, from this book called A Mindful Morning. And the author of the book is David Dillard Wright, and he's a PhD. And the subtitle is Start Each Day with a Clear Mind and Open Heart. And I got the idea for this book from Glenda, who is my aerial yoga instructor. And I've written about her with the local paper, Upper Keys Weekly. And I'll put the link for that in the notes, as well as the information on this book. But I started going to aerial yoga in August. So aerial yoga is not a habit. It is definitely a practice. It's intentional. I go to aerial yoga primarily for two reasons, I would say. Number one, to stretch, because I'm really bad at stretching. Obviously, I just mentioned my friend Paula and blow drying her hair and how I'm impressed that she always remembers to stretch. And also the other reason is just like the mindfulness of it, clearing my mind is just really something I just enjoy doing, and there's so many benefits from that. So yoga is perfect for that. I'm not trying to be Miss Yoga. I'm not trying to really build a lot of core strength, to be honest, or upper body strength. I do it for the stretch and just for like the mindfulness. So Glenda takes the practice and elevates it to have rituals. So one of the things she does is read from this book. She also gives you a little bit of eucalyptus. When we do savasa at the end, we have lavender, eye pillows. She has a sound bowl. She reads at the end as well. Sometimes she says an additional prayer. So there's lots of like rituals packed into the practice. So it's really, really cool. So Ryan and I loved this book. Like every time she reads from this book, I'm like, oh my God, that passage is so amazing. So I bought it. It's on Amazon. I bought it. And so every morning, Ryan and I read the passage, the chapter. Literally it takes, a minute or two. And then we chat about it to make sure we understand the meaning. And I would say about half the time, Ryan will say, I didn't really get that. Can you break that down? So I'll break it down for him a little bit and give him some examples and kind of make it a little bit more layman's terms, because it is kind of intense. There's some big words, and so it does take a little extra second, but it's really, really good. And that is something that we have made a practice, but there's really no ritual around it. I just read it and we talk about it. So it's really more of a practice versus the ritual of the full moon and the new moon and going outside. See? So there's just like a little bit of a difference. But that's been really cool. So I wanted to share that book with you because I know last week in podcast episode 179, I talked about manifestation and the law of attraction. And if you've not listened to that podcast, go back and listen to that podcast. And I mentioned not only Debbra Lupien's books, and she has been on the podcast before. So I mentioned her 21-day meditation challenge books, but I also mentioned The Lotus and the Lily from Janet Connor. So again, I was doing both of their challenges at the same time during my meditation practice, and I was actually making it a ritual because I was reading, I was meditating, I was journaling, I always have a candle lit, and I always hold a crystal in my right hand when I meditate, which I've talked about before. So those tips, those things that I do that are extra make it into a ritual. See? So it's very interesting. It's kind of fun to do a little bit of a deep dive, which is why too I wanted to do this podcast. So you can kind of go, oh yeah, that's just a habit. But I can elevate it and make it a practice, and I can elevate it even further and make it a ritual. So, we all have so many things in our lives that we do, and just like think about it a little more. Like, how can you make it more intentional? And then if it doesn't serve you, let's say you're doing a full moon or new moon ritual and you're not really seeing anything and you feel like it's work, it's work to bring all your crystals outside. It's work to have to write on a piece of paper. It's work to grab your husband. Then don't do it. So, sometimes we don't do it. We don't do that all the time. We do it just once in a while if we feel like we have a lot going on in our lives, but it's not like we do it all the time. So is it a serious practice for us? Whereas some people probably do it all the time. Yeah, it's not so serious, maybe every other month we remember to do it if we feel like we should or need to, however you want to put it. So it's just kind of interesting. So the last thing I want to mention is a shout out to DD Creative. She and I are connected on Twitter and on Medium, and I'm going to put her information in the show notes. And if I remember correctly, she lives in Australia, but I know she's a Pinterest expert and coach, and she's also obviously a writer. And so I had put on Twitter, I just put out there, does anyone want to share their evening rituals? So she did, which was really, really cool. So I'm going to share what she said because it kind of made me laugh because it goes back to stretching. So she said she turns off all her electronics before an hour or so before going to sleep, which is a really excellent practice. I believe that's in my opinion, a practice because that's intentional. She's intentionally doing that. It's not just a habit. She's obviously doing that to kind of shut herself down, her system down. And then she does light yoga and stretching. So when you hear someone else's practices or rituals or even habits, I think it's really important that you don't just follow to follow, because that's what is going on out there in this world. Is so many people are just following another coach that, it worked for them, so it must work for me too, but we're all different, right? However, you can pick up inspiration from other people and be like, yep, this is another sign for me. This is another reminder that I need to stretch more. So back to the stretching. And so I had to laugh when I read her reply back to me on Twitter about the stretching, because that is definitely something that I just fail miserably at. So I'm very grateful for aerial yoga on Saturday mornings, because at least I know I've got that really good stretch in for an hour, but I need to do it more. And I did do it this morning. So thank you so much, Dee Dee, for inspiring me and reminding me that I need to stretch. But for stretching for me, I just need to make it a habit. And, I needed to get to that level, like my water drinking and walking, where it's just a habit. And because I do think that stretching is really important, especially as we get older. So that is all I have for today. I know this was jam-packed. And again, I would love to hear from you how this shifted maybe something for you, or you wish to add something into your routine, or even subtract it. Be like, this doesn't serve me. Why am I doing this? I don't get anything from this. I've just been following someone else's advice, and it's not for me. That's okay. That's okay. You don't need to feel like following every single person that's ahead of you is going to lead you down that same path. It doesn't work like that. You have to really know what works for you, follow your own intuition, and make those changes as you go along. So reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, obviously, or Instagram. Connect with me, Melinda, at melindavanfleet.com. And until next week, be grateful, be curious, always be learning. And you know what? Have some fun too. Thanks for listening.